we often vote in that individual that leads from the front.
Yeah.
And why can't it be someone that leads from behind or leads from the side? And that's their natural inclination. And then why can't we support them to build those skill sets they need if they need to step into leading from the front in moments?
You can't pour from an empty cup. If your cup's empty, there's nothing to give in this. And the same goes with leadership. We need to be able to have something within us to be able to give something.
The purpose of school isn't just to sit on a chair and get our brains fed with new information and knowledge. The purpose of that information and that knowledge is hopefully that they use these skills beyond the school gate.
Podclass acknowledges the true and traditional custodians of the land we meet on here today. We are meeting in Naarm and pay our respect to the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We extend that respect to the elders, past, present and emerging, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening today.
So no one told you teaching was gonna be this way. Your lesson plans are jokes, your patience broke, you're feeling in disarray. It's like you're always stuck in report writing, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your school year. But I'll be here for you.
When the students start to riot,
I'll be here for you.
even if your coffee's gone cold,
I'll be here for you. 'Cause you're there for them too.
Hello and welcome to Podclass, the podcast for teachers, educators, anyone who's looking for a little bit of inspo in this space. You are joined by your host, Wil Massara, founder of
Bonjour.
Youth Leadership Academy Australia. Bonjour, Will. Bonjour.
I'm not French.
He's not French. We're not going to do accents.
Please do accents.
And you're also joined by Skye and Amanda, the founders of
Youth Engagement Project. We are 2 teachers and a 21-year-old CEO. Thanks for being here.
We're so excited.
not some guy we just found on the street, which is what we joked about in our intro. We've actually known Will for quite a number of years, and Amanda and I have both been teachers for 10 years now in the education space, and Will has been running Youth Leadership Academy Australia since you were how old, Will?
15 years old? That's been 6 years.
6 whole years. And it's pretty much, I like to think of you as an expert in the youth space in terms of what youth need and kind of understanding the young people of Australia.
Thank you. It's been a really quite fun journey. We've worked with over 40,000 young people now, and over 1,000 schools around Australia trust us to be able to deliver leadership programs.
It's insane, genuinely insane.
So insane. And of course, every year you run a national youth leadership conference tour, which is happening as we're actually recording this.
As we are recording,
We
you
are-
you may have been there, and that's how you found this podcast.
Hi, friends.
Hi.
Welcome here. Welcome back. It's great to be with you again.
So I feel like we probably need to tell people what Podclass is going to be all about. So Podclass is a podcast. Oh my God, what? It's a podcast?
Oh my gosh, a play on words? Wild. We
Podcast.
never thought about it.
I know. It's a podcast where we are going to be running through kind of some of those major kind of buzzwords and things that are happening in the youth and education space. And whether you're someone who is like a bit disillusioned with teaching, maybe you're at the end of your tether, maybe you'll find some kind of, I don't know, bit of inspiration or the pep talk that you need or a strategy that you could use to help, I don't know, reestablish your love of teaching while you're doing it in the first place.
So we are here to share just that from 2 teachers and a young individual who works so much in this space. So let's get into it.
Let's do it. And I'm super excited to hopefully be able to, for me to be able to bring that youth perspective into the conversations about young people, and for you to bring it from a lens of being in the education space as both a teacher, then also within Youth Engagement Project as well.
Love.
So what are we talking about today, team?
This is the one on student leadership, voice and agency.
So I guess we should start with what does student leadership, voice and agency actually mean, and what does that look like in education and in schools?
I feel like let's dive in with Will. You're all over this. I love
Straight
every
away.
time I hear you talk about leadership and agency.
I think that the only way we build a future that we really are excited by and that we feel all really positive about is that we empower young people to lead their communities and their schools. And that looks like really redefining leadership as something that's achievable, something that's attainable, and also something that a young person can define for themselves. And I think it's really important to amplify the fact that leadership in a school isn't just about the badge or isn't just about the person at the front of the room. It's also them young people that leading from behind or leading from the sides that are so incredibly important in building the society and something that we can actually really look forward to, and also school culture that's really positive as well.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that's such an important point, because when we think about school, what's the purpose, right? The purpose of school isn't just to sit on a chair and to kind of get our brains fed with new information and knowledge. It's the purpose of that information and that knowledge is hopefully that they use these skills beyond the school gates, that they're building some kind of skills that will serve them in their day-to-day life, right? And you've just mentioned about badges, and I think that's something that's really important, because we see our leaders in society are those people that maybe have the titles, and I think that leadership, you don't have to have a title in order to be a leader. So that idea of leadership, agency and voice can absolutely be established in school settings without it needing to be the school captains or the student representative or whatever it is, that all students can develop leadership skills.
Absolutely. And this is so much of the conversation on National Tour. You know, it's so much of our conversations in our conferences with schools, with young people. It's around redefining leadership, and that leadership actually starts with standing in your true self. For so many young people right now, there's so much pressure and overwhelm to be a certain kind of way, to show up in a certain kind of place. And I think young people are feeling more than ever that they want to, you know, show up as something that maybe isn't their true selves, because they're wanting to fit in. And so what we talk about is, when you start with who you are, like bringing your set of values, of beliefs, your experiences into your leadership, that is true leadership. And from that place, we can guide and we can influence. And that doesn't require any badge. It doesn't require any label.
Yeah.
It doesn't require standing on a stage. What it requires is authenticity. And so the real question I feel with leadership and agency is, how do we help guide our young people to show up as their true selves in their leadership?
And it's a great question. And I think, Wil, you're really well placed to talk about this, because it's all well and good for us to know this about leadership, right? But if that is not the message that our young people are receiving in their school environments, in their classrooms, from their teachers, there's that whole thing, right? You can't be what you can't see. And we need to have teachers as being those role models and to be giving these messages to young people. Now, Wil, I don't mean to point out our age difference, but
Not that there's a generational gap here or anything like that.
But what I know, you were in school really not that long ago. What was your experience of leadership in school, and what do you see as being the things that teachers should be doing and how they should be talking about leadership, voice and agency in this space?
I think there's two really different sort of lenses. There's one of me in school, then there's one where I now work with schools, and it's like, when we think about student leadership, we think about that one team of students who are just responsible for fundraisings and cupcakes.
Yeah, right.
which is very fair, and we like cupcakes.
And it's great, and fundraising's also great.
Yeah, absolutely. But student leadership isn't about that one team. It's about how do we build something within that whole classroom and within that classroom space, in every classroom, where young people feel like they can support one another, where young people feel like they are empowered. And the best way we can equip teachers and educators to do that is by simply demonstrating and pioneering these good qualities as a leader. And we know how much young people adore their teachers, whether they say it or not. The reality is they have such an impact in their lives, and what we can capture on. And the even more powerful part is when we pioneer kindness, when we pioneer looking after ourselves, when we pioneer well-being. And I don't say that in a way to be like, well, we don't have any more time to pioneer well-being. And I also think the other part of it is, it doesn't need to add more time or more stress or more workload to you. Simply by showing up as a leader, you're then empowering your students to do the same.
Yeah.
So good. Love that so much. And I also feel like what you've essentially said there in so many words is, what we're about is development of the whole person.
Yeah.
You know, in a school space, there is so much focus on those hard skills and those subjects, and we know that's crucial and essential. However, there's so much more that's required to set our young people up for success in the 21st century. And what that looks like is building and developing the whole individual. And so what I believe is that leadership is young people being able to feel like they can show up, as I said before, as who they are, and that they have a skill set to step into this world of using not just the hard skills of leadership and the hard skills of education, but also those soft skills as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's working with people, it's having communication, it's overcoming challenges, it's responding to change, it's all of those things. And this is why we're starting at leadership and agency, because this is the foundation. If we can empower our young people to come from a place of, you know, who they are in different spaces, in different places, to come from their truth and then to apply skills, we're setting them up to build those other soft and hard skills on top of that.
And this is like, all of this conversation is all well and good, right? And it's like absolutely important for us to have. But also, like, I'm a teacher. I know what it's like to be in a classroom and to feel the pressure of having like, oh, we've got to make sure that we're raising up leaders, and we've got to make sure we're bringing voice and agency, and that's coming down from our leadership teams and from even bigger than that, you know, it's like all these buzzwords in education, and that's great. But if I'm also a teacher that then teaches 6 classes, you know, say I'm an English teacher and I've got thousands and thousands of words to mark on a weekend, like when do I have time to even consider where I'm bringing in voice and agency and leadership into a classroom, you know?
Absolutely. And so I feel like what it is, I so agree with that, you know, because these are great words and it all sounds great. And in an ideal world, I feel like
every single
important.
class would have it in an ideal world.
Exactly.
I wouldn't have a job in the ideal world.
Yeah, precisely. And neither would we in an ideal world. And yet that's not where we are.
Yeah.
So how do we move toward that? How do we implement? And so I think let's have a talk about 1% shifts. You know, what are those 1% shifts we can make, whether it is with our team at school, whether it is in a classroom space, whether it is in extracurricular spaces. What are the 1% shifts we can make that highlight and influence leadership and agency with our young people?
And I think probably, and Will, I know you're all over this, but before we talk about like those little 1%ers, I think it's important for us to remember that there's like different kinds of leaders. Leaders don't have they don't fit into one box and one category. We can lead from the front, we can lead from the side, we can lead from behind. And we need to figure out a way to nurture those qualities in students, because like I know when I was in school and even as a teacher, the kids that get branded as being like the leaders are often the ones that have the biggest voice, or the ones that are maybe the most confident and they're willing to speak at the assembly or stand up in front of their peers. And I think sometimes that can dismiss the other potential leaders, and because everyone has leadership in them. So how do we tap into that, and how do we tap into those student voices?
And it's so important. Like I know we all agree that we wouldn't be where we are without them people who are leading from behind in our teams. So much of what we do is with people behind the scenes actually leading us, and a student leadership team should be a diverse group of people, whereas a lot of the schools we work with and a lot of the classrooms that we're in, it's like the most academic or the most loud, and it's just like 12 people copy and pasted.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, so if you think about these 1%ers, right? So encouraging those voices, those maybe the people that do lead from the front, lead from the side, lead from behind.
Yeah.
What are some of those 1%ers? I know that in classrooms, I've been an educator for 10 years. I've been in leadership for the last couple of years. I've stepped out of teaching for the first time this year. And I know for me, it's like creating those really small changes day to day. So it's having, you know, empowering different students to do little leadership tasks and using an encouraging word and getting on their level and having that rapport with your young people to know where their skill set is and to push them that tiny bit out of their comfort zone so they can start to stretch and feel into their leadership. And sometimes it's taking the student that maybe is the most confident, that is the loudest, that has those, you know, quote unquote, most natural leadership qualities in a classroom and going, hey, I've noticed Emily over there would like love to have an opportunity to speak. Maybe you could have a word with them and maybe tomorrow together you could do this thing or whatever it might be. And then we're not only empowering that person who's, you know, branded as a natural leader, but then that student is also then able to uplift someone else to tap into their strengths and skills.
For sure. And I also feel like, this realm of redefining leadership, that it's not just that badge at the front of the room, it is all of these places. I feel in schools and in places and spaces with young people, what we can do as well is equally acknowledge the power in each of those leadership roles.
Yeah.
So equally acknowledge, when we're leading from behind, the difference that that's making, and acknowledging those students that are leading from behind. And when we hear about this, it's those students that really allow other people to step forward. They really play that supporter role, They really allow everyone to feel comfortable. And so I'm sure we're all picturing a student right now that plays exactly that role.
Yeah.
So let's acknowledge them for that, and let's call that leadership when we see it.
Yeah.
Let's acknowledge when we see it happening from the side. When leading from the side is the students who create a really collaborative space for everyone to be seen and heard. And when we witness that, let's acknowledge that in our students, and let's call it leadership because it is.
Can I, little side note story?
Yes.
Always.
So
welcome.
I love your side note stories.
So teaching last year, we did our leadership nominations for all of our students, and the way that our school did it was they had a class captain was kind of nominated from each class, and I had a student come up to me after the nominations were announced, and she hadn't received a leadership position. And so she came to see me and was like, "Oh, Miss Hughes, I was just I know I'm not a school leader, but I would really love to run an AFL tipping competition for the whole year level. Should I talk to one of the leaders about it so that they can do it?" And I was like, "Well, why can't you do it?" And she was like, "Well, because I'm not a leader." And I was like, "Yeah, but you have this awesome idea, right? So you don't have to have the badge of the class captain in order to start an initiative or run a club or do whatever." And I think just hearing that, it was such a permission-based response for her to be like, I can do that.
100%.
And so she started this
100%.
amazing AFL tipping comp and ran that for the entire year level without a leadership badge, but she still got an experience of what it was like to tap into her skill set, her passions, her drive to do that for everyone.
And the more that we do that, it's when we start shifting culture of what's expected by leadership teams, right?
And I think another 1% acknowledgement that we can make is, I know you always talk about, Wil, that you fundamentally believe that leadership begins with self-leadership. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that looks like and feels like with our young people, and also how can we be acknowledging self-leadership as leadership when we witness that in our spaces?
We know you can't pour from an empty cup. If your cup's empty, there's nothing to give in this. And the same goes with leadership. We need to be able to have something within us to be able to give something. And I know that starts with our minds and working through that with ourselves. And then it leads to how we're regulating our emotions and understanding what is inside and outside our control. And then also acknowledging that the small things that we do every day and the way that we show up fundamentally determines how we build relationships, how people see us, how our students see us, how much they trust us. And it's all of these little things that we implement and have structures for that can build trust and really increase the level of agency within the classroom. Because when someone feels really empowered and confident, they're a lot more likely to take a step right. They're a lot more likely to do something about a frustration that they see.
Yeah, I love it. And self-leadership's not just for students, right? It's for all of us.
It's
It's for educators. It's for anyone
No one
in society.
can pour from an empty cup.
Right? You can't pour from an empty cup. I love it. And it's so simple, but it's so true. Hey, I was talking to an educator at one of WILA conferences, actually. So WILA is Youth Leadership Academy Australia, WILA. I was talking to a teacher at a WILA conference, and they were sharing with me how in their school, they don't put names on student leadership applications. So when their students vote for their school representatives and things like that, it's just candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3, and there's no names.
Okay.
So right? But it kind of removes this popularity vote from the whole piece. What do you guys think of that?
Well, I guess it removes that social agency piece, right?
Yeah.
So if there's someone that carries all of the social agency, chances are, let's be real, they're going to pull more of those votes, right?
Yes.
That's kind of how it works, and we've all seen it, we've all heard it, we've all felt it. So maybe what that does is make it purely a values-based, leadership-based decision.
Yeah.
I think I don't mind it.
See, my clash would be, as a person who can't really write very well, do they lose They're the sort of step ahead. What about the person whose best way to communicate is through words?
And yet I agree with you. And then one more throwback I would have around that supporting this is that we've spoken about that leadership isn't just leading from the front, it's leading from the side and behind. And my guess is when we know who it is, we often vote in that individual that leads from the front.
Yeah.
And why can't it be someone that leads from behind or leads from the side? And that's their natural inclination. And then why can't we support them to build those skill sets they need if they need to step into leading from the front in moments? So I feel like it opens more opportunity for those non-traditional leaders to hold those leadership positions.
Well, I kind of get where Will's coming from though, because if your natural strength isn't in English or writing or whatever it is,
You can't get charisma from a piece of paper.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I first mentioned this idea, I was like, oh, that's awesome. And just having Will's comment now, I'm like, unsure. Maybe there's like a happy medium somewhere in the middle of that. And maybe it's like weighting different things, right? So the student votes X amount of percentage, and then the teachers have a percentage of a vote, and then there's maybe like the previous year's executive team or leadership team gets a percentage of the vote,
Right.
and, or like whatever it is. So it's
And
like a bit more balanced.
And a chunk of it is based on an interview, and a chunk of it is based on a presentation, or, absolutely. Maybe that's like the beautiful middle ground of acknowledging all of those pieces.
The only final thing that I want to touch on is the student voice part, and how do we implement it into our classrooms in a really easy way. And what we know is one of the most important things is how we communicate with one another. And what we often do with our teams, Amanda and I have done it multiple times, is setting the framework on how we give and receive feedback. And that's something you can do in your classroom.
Yes.
And you get everyone to sign the bottom of the piece of paper.
Yes.
You put it on the wall. You agree on how you communicate with each other.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And having students be the people that contribute to what that is. So it's not just like the teacher going, here's all the ideas and this is how we operate and these are the rules of the classroom. Having that be a collaborative process.
That's not exciting, nor do they have ownership over it.
Yeah.
Right, and it also, or agency.
And they get frustrated because they're being told what to do again.
Yes, yeah.
The youth being frustrated? What? But yeah, it's so true. And it's important, right? Because it's life skills. That's actually life skills in building. It's teaching them how to take ownership of themselves, of their actions, of their choices. And you can't disagree with something when you're the person who's come up with it in the first place and agreed to that.
Yes, and let's say, for example, we're a teacher in the space and we've gone ahead and done this, and what we've found is that maybe a month in, it's not actually as robust as what our class needs. Let's revisit it. Let's not say, oh, well, this isn't working, here's what our agreements are going to be. Let's revisit it with the class. Let's acknowledge, hey, we've noticed some gaps. How do we fill those gaps in our agreements that we make together?
Yeah.
Because that's also life. We don't get it right the first time.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist, So we have to be willing to also model that, bringing it back, coming back and adding value, identifying gaps and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, final thoughts on leadership. Go.
One sentence each. What does leadership mean to you?
Was that your sentence? No, I'm just kidding.
Will.
Go on. Oh, it's me. Okay.
It's you.
Final thoughts on leadership. It's my entire life. How can I have one sentence?
Okay, you can have two.
Not just in the team, but in the entire school.
Oh, I love that. I think that mine would be that anyone can be a leader. It's about understanding how to tap into those innate qualities and strengths. And that's one of our jobs as educators, to be the people that can see that maybe when young people can't see it for themselves, and encourage them to find that confidence, to take a step out of their comfort zone and tap into it. Yours is going to be a quote, Brené Brown quote. Go. No.
Leadership is
the ability
to influence and guide yourselves and others, Brené Brown. And also one from me would be that never underestimate the confidence built in the little moments. Never underestimate the gentle feedback given in the little moments. In fact, my personal opinion is it's those little moments, those little catches where we're like, that was a beautiful act of leadership.
Yeah.
We love what you did there. Thank you for supporting this young person.
I think it's really important that that's done in an authentic way.
Yes. Those little moments build so much confidence.
This has
Team,
been Podclass.
thank you for being here.
Thanks for being here.
2 teachers and a 21-year-old we found on the street.
We will see you next week. Well, we will hear you next week. No, you'll hear us. Bye.
See you again soon.
Bye.